The morning sun cast a golden glow over the quiet street as Clara eased herself onto the garden bench, her cane resting at her side. At 83, her movements were slower, her strength not what it once was, but her mind was as sharp as the pruners she kept in her apron pocket. The air smelled faintly of freshly turned earth and the soft perfume of lilacs, blending into a soothing melody of scents. Clara turned her gaze to the garden gate, the ornate iron arch entwined with ivy, and smiled softly. It had been a gift from her late husband, Samuel, nearly 50 years ago, a gateway not just to her garden but to countless memories. The gate wasn't just any gate. Samuel had built it with his own hands, inscribing their initials into the iron with careful strokes. She could still trace the faint S+C etched on the side whenever her fingers lingered there. "Every great garden needs a grand entrance," he'd said, his eyes twinkling like morning dew on the grass. Together, they had cultivated the space, transforming an empty patch of land into a symphony of roses, lilacs, and Clara's favorite, peonies. Over the years, the garden became their sanctuary, a place to share dreams, weather storms, and celebrate milestones. It had seen so much: the playful laughter of children running barefoot through the rows of flowers, picnics under the shade of the oak tree, and quiet evenings with Samuel, sharing tea and watching the stars come alive. It was where Clara had said goodbye to him, too, on a crisp autumn day, the sound of leaves crunching underfoot as she stood by his side for the last time. Now, the gate stood slightly ajar, its latch rusty with time. Clara had left it that way intentionally, as though she was still waiting for Samuel to walk through it. Her children, now grown with families of their own, worried about her eccentricities, but Clara paid them no mind. The garden was her world, and the gate was its heart. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Clara trimmed the roses, she noticed a boy lingering near the gate. He couldn't have been more than 10, with unruly hair that seemed to have a mind of its own and a shy demeanor. His clothes were slightly too big for his small frame, and he clutched a tattered notebook in his hands. His wide, curious eyes darted from the gate to the garden, taking in every detail as if he were cataloguing it in his mind. "Hello there," Clara called gently, not wanting to startle him. Her voice carried the warmth of the sun-dappled garden, inviting but unassuming. The boy hesitated, shuffling his feet and glancing down at his shoes. Finally, he looked up and said, "Hi." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Your gardens. Really cool." Clara chuckled, her laugh like the rustling of leaves in the wind. "Thank you. Would you like to come in?" His eyes widened. "Can I? Really?" "Of course," she said with a smile. "A garden is meant to be shared." The boy stepped closer, his movements cautious, as though afraid the gate might crumble beneath his touch. He pushed it open slowly, the hinges creaking in protest, and took a tentative step inside. His gaze swept over the vibrant blooms, the weathered bench, and the bird bath nestled among the marigolds. For a moment, he seemed lost in wonder. "What's your name?" Clara asked, resting her hands on her cane. "Jamie," he replied, his voice gaining a bit more confidence. I like drawing gardens. Can I draw yours?" Clara's heart swelled with unexpected joy. "Of course, Jamie. You can sit on that bench over there, it has the best view." Jamie plopped down eagerly, pulling a pencil from his pocket. He opened his notebook, its pages filled with sketches of flowers, trees, and landscapes. Clara watched as he began to draw, his pencil moving swiftly across the page. His brow furrowed in concentration, and his tongue poked out slightly, a habit that made Clara smile. As he worked, Clara found her thoughts drifting to another boy who had once sat in that same spot. Her son, Thomas, had loved to draw too, filling countless pages with sketches of the garden and the world beyond. She hadn't seen him in years. His job had taken him halfway across the country, and life had swept them into its relentless currents. Over the next few weeks, Jamie became a regular visitor. He would appear at the gate after school, his notebook tucked under his arm. Clara began to anticipate the sound of the creaking hinges, her heart lifting every time he arrived. They fell into an easy rhythm, Clara tending to her flowers while Jamie sketched and asked questions. "Why do you plant so many roses?" he asked one day, his pencil pausing mid-stroke. "They were Samuel's favorite," Clara said, her voice soft. "He used to say they were like life, beautiful, but with thorns to remind us to handle them carefully." Jamie nodded thoughtfully, then went back to his sketching. "What's your favorite flower?" "Peonies," Clara said without hesitation. "They're a little unruly, but when they bloom, they're breathtaking." Jamie grinned. "Like you?" Clara laughed, a sound that echoed through the garden like music. "Cheeky boy," she said, ruffling his hair. Winter came, and the garden fell silent beneath a blanket of snow. Clara missed Jamie's visits. The cold weather had kept him indoors. But one grey afternoon, as she sat by the window with a cup of tea, she heard the familiar creak of the gate. She peered outside and saw Jamie, bundled in a thick coat, holding something wrapped in brown paper. "I made you something," he said, his cheeks red from the cold. Clara unwrapped the paper carefully, revealing a framed drawing of her garden. Every detail was there, the roses, the bench, even the bird bath. But what caught her breath was the gate. Jamie had drawn it open, with a figure standing just beyond it. It was Samuel, his kind face and twinkling eyes captured perfectly. I saw his picture on your mantle," Jamie said nervously. "I hope it's okay." Clara's hands trembled as she held the drawing. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she smiled, a radiant, unbroken smile. "It's more than okay, Jamie. It's perfect." Spring arrived, and the garden bloomed anew. Clara found herself spending more time outside, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The gate still stood open, but now it felt less like a symbol of loss and more like an invitation to new memories, new friendships, and new life. And every time Jamie visited, sketchbook in hand, Clara couldn't help but think that Samuel would have loved him.